Welcome, dear friends, to The Curious Case. I'm Davis, and it's always a joy to share another quiet evening with you. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Outside, the village bells have begun to toll steady, calm, familiar. But tonight, one bell rings with a story of its own, a mystery hidden in its echo, waiting to be heard. Shall we begin? Morning in Street Mary Mead began like a sigh. Soft, predictable, and faintly scented with tea. Miss Marple sat by the window. A ball of pale blue yarn rolled near her cup. Her needles clicked steady, unhurried, comforting. Outside, the lane was half sunlight, half shadow. The milkman's cart rattled past. A dog barked once, then thought better of it. All perfectly ordinary. Across the road, Mrs. Price adjusted her curtains. Same time as always. Same nervous glance toward the church tower. It amused Miss Marple how people repeat their secrets like hymns. A breeze lifted the lace at her window. The smell of polish drifted in beeswax and lilac. She glanced at the clock on the mantel. 8:33. Or was it? The small brass pendulum swung unevenly. Tick. Pause. Tick. A hesitation, like the clock had something on its mind. Miss Marple frowned. She adjusted her spectacles, studying it. 1 second longer between each beat. Not broken, just thoughtful. Down the lane came footsteps. Quick ones. Not the lazy shuffle of the postman, nor the heavy boots of the constable. These were sharp, determined, a rhythm that didn't belong here. She looked up. A figure hurried past the gate, hat low, coat buttoned too tight for mild weather. Didn't nod, didn't notice her. Odd, for this village. From the church, a faint bell rang, not the full chime. Just one confused note, off-key. It wavered, then stopped mid-sound. Like it, too, had changed its mind. Miss Marple's knitting slowed. Her eyes narrowed. Little things. Always little things first. A curtain. Twitched at the vicarage. A shadow moved behind the glass. Someone was awake earlier than usual. She reached for her cup. The tea had gone cold. Unusual, she never let that happen. Something was shifting. Not loudly, not fast, but real. The village still looked the same, yet the air carried a small, sharp question. She glanced again at the clock. The pendulum stopped, completely still. And from outside, one door slammed. Hard. She set her knitting down. That was not the wind. The rhythm of Street Mary Mead had just missed a beat. The slam echoed down the lane. Short, hard, final. Miss Marple stood. Her teacup rattled on the saucer. No wind, no rain, no reason for a door to bang like that. She reached the window. Nothing. Just the lane quiet again. Then a sound from the church. A shout. Then another. Faint at first, then sharper. Panic has a tone, and this was it. She slipped on her shawl and opened the door. Cold air. The smell of polish still lingered, sweet and odd. The clock inside remained still, its pendulum frozen mid-swing. Outside, 2 boys were running toward the churchyard. Their boots struck the stones fast, uneven. One of them glanced back, eyes wide. Something's happened. She followed, slow but steady, her steps small, her thoughts sharp. The church stood open, its heavy door half swung. Inside voices, muffled, urgent, and the hollow echo of feet scraping against tile. Mrs. Price was there, hands at her mouth. The vicar knelt beside the front pew. Someone lay on the floor. A man. Miss Marple's heart didn't race. It rarely did. She simply noticed. His coat was open. His face pale, jaw slack, eyes half shut. Around him confusion. No blood, no noise. Just the strange stillness that follows a shock. "Fetch Dr. Haydock," the vicar said. But no one moved. They only stared. Miss Marple stepped closer. "Give him air," she murmured. But even as she spoke, she saw it, that faint, wrong stillness. The kind that tells you breath has already gone. She knelt. Her fingers hovered above his wrist. Cold. Too cold for morning. The young curate stood by, trembling. He just Fell. During rehearsal. Said he felt lightheaded. His voice broke. We thought he was joking. Someone sobbed. The sound bounced off the stone walls, then died. Dr. Haydock burst through the door moments later, coat half-buttoned, bag swinging. He went straight to the body. The murmurs stopped. The doctor's hands moved fast. Pulse, eyes, chest. Then slower, then still. He looked up. Everyone waited. "It's no faint," he said quietly. His voice was solid, heavy with knowing. "He's gone." Gasps. Then whispers. The kind that start low and grow legs. Miss Marple didn't move. Her eyes went to the man's hand curled strangely inward, as if holding something invisible. She noted it, the way she always did. A detail to remember. Always start with the hands. The clock from the tower struck 9, each note dull, delayed, as if the whole village was holding its breath. The doctor closed his bag. The vicar crossed himself. And Miss Marple. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "He's not breathing." The calm had cracked, and Street Mary Mead would never sound the same again. The sound spread faster than the truth. By the time Dr. Haydock stood, half the village was already at the door. Whispers moved like wind. He collapsed. Fainted, they say. No, not fainted. Dead. Miss Marple stayed where she was. Still, hands folded, eyes steady. The vicar tried to quiet them, but panic never listens to reason. Mrs. Price clutched her handbag like a child. Young Tommy Bell asked if it was poison. Someone else muttered about heart trouble. The bell rope swung idly above, brushing the wall with a low creak. Outside, more feet gathered. Boots, heels, the rhythm of curiosity and fear. Doctor Haydock was kneeling again. He didn't speak, just worked, jaw tight, hands sure. A woman sobbed near the altar rail. The sound tore through the silence, then faded. The church smelled of dust and wax. Cold air drifted in from the open door. Inspector Slack arrived moments later, coat flapping, face thunder. He didn't like being called before tea. "Clear the doorway," he barked. But no one moved. Villagers don't leave a mystery, not when it's local. Miss Marple rose, her back straight, her voice calm. "Let the doctor breathe, please." She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The crowd parted by instinct. Dr. Haydock looked up at her brief, silent recognition. They had done this before, in other quiet tragedies. He turned to Slack. Not a faint, not exhaustion. He pressed his stethoscope to the still chest again. Waited, counted. Nothing. Slack's jaw tightened. "Cause?" "Too early," Haydock said. His voice dropped lower. "But I'd say something sudden. Violent, perhaps." The word violent landed hard. A shiver rippled through the crowd. No one spoke now. No one wanted to be heard. Miss Marple watched faces. Always the faces. Mrs. Price shocked but thrilled. Tommy Bell pale, eyes darting. The vicar murmuring something about the soul's journey. But one man standing near the font didn't move at all. Not a word. Not a blink. Just a stare. She noted it quietly. Outside, a cart horse stamped its hoof. Impatient. Nervous. Even the animals sensed the change. Slack cleared his throat. "All right, everyone. Back home. I'll take statements later." Grumbling, muttering, they began to scatter. Some whispered prayers. Some whispered names. Miss Marple lingered. Her eyes followed the doctor's hands. He was checking again, wrist, neck, pulse. Then he stopped. Gently, he folded the man's coat over his chest and looked up. The hush returned. Even the air seemed to wait. Dr. Haydock stood, met Miss Marple's gaze, and said softly, "He's gone, Jane. Completely gone. Confirmation real death, and something far darker beneath it." Inspector Slack hated churches. Too cold, too quiet, too full of whispers. He stood by the altar rail, hat in hand, scowl deep enough to bury patience. "Right. No one leaves," he said. And nobody did. Dr. Haydock knelt again beside the body, his breath clouded in the cold air. Dead within minutes. he murmured. Possibly instant. Miss Marple didn't speak. She watched. Hands clasped neatly, expression mild. Slack paced the aisle like a hound sniffing for reason. Name? Arthur Penrose, the vicar said. Volunteer organist. Perfect health, as far as we knew. Perfect health rarely lasts, Haydock muttered. He pulled back the man's sleeve. Bruising. Small. Circular. Needle? Slack guessed. Possible. The word floated in the air, soft but heavy. The villagers exchanged looks. Poison meant intention. Intention meant one of them. Miss Marple's eyes went to the man's coat. Not torn. Not rumpled. Neat. Almost too neat. Someone had straightened it. That wasn't natural. She stepped closer. Slack frowned. Careful, Miss Marple. Crime scene. She smiled faintly. I only look, Inspector. I never touch. Her eyes traced the line of the pew. One hymn book lay open, though no service was running. She tilted her head. Page 97. Lead kindly light. She knew the church schedule. That hymn hadn't been used in months. She turned. Was he practicing alone? The vicar nodded. He often played after breakfast. Said it cleared his mind. Anyone else with him? No one. I heard the organ stop. Thought he'd gone home. Slack crouched beside the body, scanning the floor. Nothing obvious. No spilled cup, no broken glass, no fallen paper. But the man's hand clenched. Slack forced it open with a handkerchief. A small piece of paper, folded. He opened it carefully. A number. 3. 15. Time? Haydock asked. Slack shook his head. Too early. He died around 9. Miss Marple looked at the note again. Her brow furrowed. It wasn't written in haste. Neat, tidy digits, deliberate. She turned toward the front pew again. The cushion under the armrest was slightly skewed, flattened, as though someone had sat there recently. She touched the corner gently. Cold, damp. Not from the morning air, from something else. Something spilled. Slack followed her gaze. What now? She pointed. The cushion. Out of place. He sighed. It's a cushion, Miss Marple. Yes, she said softly. But it wasn't there during service on Sunday. Slack blinked. How can you possibly know that? I sit in that pew every week, she said mildly, and I don't recall a dark stain. Haydock moved closer, squinting. He pressed a finger to the fabric, then sniffed. Almond, he said. Faint, but clear. The word hung there again. This time, no one misunderstood it. Slack straightened, eyes sharp. Cyanide? Haydock nodded slowly. Almost certainly. The crowd's whisper started again like rain beginning. Miss Marple stepped back. The body looked smaller now. The church larger. Too large for safety. She studied the open hymn book once more. The page fluttered. Something small was stuck beneath it, a pressed flower. Lily of the valley. Toxic. Symbolic. Both. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. Dr. Haydock closed his bag. Inspector Slack barked for order. The villagers drifted backward, muttering prayers or questions. Miss Marple stayed by the pew. Her eyes lingered on that open page, on the neat note in the dead man's hand, on the faint scent of almonds that clung to the air. Something didn't fit. Not the timing. Not the hymn. Not the cushion. She whispered it almost to herself. That shouldn't be there. Her first doubt quiet, logical, and deadly accurate. The body had been taken to the vestry. Inspector Slack stood guard like a statue, arms folded, eyes narrowed, patience thin. Doctor says cyanide, he muttered. Clever trick, that. No smell till it's too late. Miss Marple's gaze drifted to the pew again. The cushion, the hymn book, the pressed flower, too many gentle things around something cruel. She spoke softly. Inspector, may I? Slack sighed. Go on then, but no touching. She nodded. Her gloved hand hovered above the hymn book. The page still open. Lead kindly light. She leaned closer. See that? She said quietly. Powder on the corner. Slack squinted. Dust. Not dust, she replied. Powder. Fine. Grainy, white. Doctor. Haydock bent beside her, curious. He dipped a finger, then sniffed. Bitter, almond base, he said. Trace of prussic acid crystals, I'd wager. Slack grimaced. So you're saying someone poisoned the pew? Not the pew, Miss Marple said. The book. They stared at her. She turned the page carefully with a knitting needle from her bag. On the underside, faint residue, almost invisible. Someone dusted the edge, she said, perhaps with a gloved hand. He turned the page during practice and absorbed the poison through the skin. Slack shook his head. Through paper? Haydock nodded. It's possible. Cyanide salts act fast if combined with heat or sweat. The skin does the rest. Slack frowned. Why a hymn book? Marple's eyes softened. Because he would touch it without suspicion. Familiar things kill most cleanly. The inspector muttered something under his breath. She ignored him. Her focus moved to the pressed flower again. Lily of the valley. Symbol of purity. Toxic in reality. A message, perhaps. Mrs. Price. Marple called gently. The woman flinched. Yes, Miss Marple. You help tidy the pews after service, don't you? I do, yes. When did you last clean this one? Mrs. Price hesitated. Monday. But I didn't move the books. I just dusted around them. So, this residue appeared after Monday, Marple murmured. That narrows our window. Slack scribbled in his notebook. Who's been in here since? The choir, said the vicar. Arthur was rehearsing with them on Wednesday. Alone on Thursday. And the door? Always open in daylight. Slack muttered again. So, anyone could walk in. Yes, Miss Marple said. Anyone, or someone very specific. She turned to Dr. Haydock. The flower. Would it preserve traces? Possibly. Depends how recently it was handled. Then handle it carefully, she said. Haydock took out tweezers, lifting the lily from the page. Its stem left a faint imprint, a darker oval, dampened slightly. He held it to the light. There's powder here too, he said quietly. Whoever placed it touched the poison. Slack grunted. Maybe our killer's next. Marple said nothing. Her eyes drifted toward the aisle. One footprint stood out small, narrow, feminine. Dust had collected unevenly around it. Recent. She moved closer. The shape told her more than a confession ever could. It faced the pew directly. Not walking past. Standing. Waiting. Slack followed her gaze. Another clue. She smiled faintly. I think so. You see, Inspector, grief doesn't linger this close. But guilt might. He scowled. You're guessing. I observe, she corrected gently. You guess. Haydock's laugh broke the tension. Touché. Slack. Slack ignored him. Fine. Let's say someone poisoned the hymn book. Who? Why? What for? Marple's expression softened again. Because Mr. Penrose played the organ every morning. Same pew. Same ritual. The killer didn't need to chase him. They only needed to wait. Slack's eyes narrowed. Inside job, then. Marple tilted her head. I wouldn't call it a job, Inspector. More devotion gone wrong. Haydock straightened, dusting off his knees. Whoever did this knew chemistry and patience. Slack exhaled through his teeth. Lovely. A clever killer in a village full of amateurs. Miss Marple looked back at the open book, its pale pages flecked with death. For a moment, she almost pitied it. The gentleness of faith turned into a weapon. She turned to them both. Inspector, she said softly, this wasn't an accident. The logic turned cold. Street Mary Mead had a murderer. By noon, the church looked less holy and more like a workshop. Inspector Slack had rolled up his sleeves. Dr. Haydock was back with his kit. And Miss Marple, quiet as ever, watched everything from the third pew. The hymn book lay open on a cloth. Beside it a magnifier, tweezers, and a small lamp borrowed from the vicar's study. The faint scent of almonds still lingered, mixed now with polish and dust. Slack grunted. Right. We've dusted, scraped, sniffed, and stared, and all we've got is powder on a book. Haydock didn't look up. Patience, Inspector. Murder hides in the details. Miss Marple smiled faintly. and details often hide in plain sight. She nodded toward the binding. A thin line of glue, uneven, glimmering under light. Fresh. Someone resealed it, she said. Look, the spine's darker at one edge. Haydock leaned closer. He touched it with a scalpel tip. The edge lifted slightly, just enough to reveal a thin sliver of metal wire. Slack froze. What in blazes? Haydock peeled it back carefully. A delicate coil ran through the spine, threaded to a small metal bead hidden in the corner. A mechanism, he murmured. Thin wire, possibly connected to a capsule. Slack's eyes widened. Capsule? Of poison? Likely. Pressure. Activated. He opens the book. The bead breaks, the powder releases. Silence. Even the vicar stopped breathing for a moment. Miss Marple's gaze stayed fixed. She spoke quietly. That means it wasn't random. Someone made this. Slack ran a hand through his hair. Who in this village knows how to build that? Haydock answered first. Chemistry teacher at the grammar school. Mr. Lester. Retired now. Slack smirked. Retired, or hiding a side hobby? Miss Marple's tone softened. Mr. Lester can barely walk to the post office, and he was at choir practice the same evening as Mr. Penrose. Slack shrugged. Could have prepared it earlier. Or someone could have learned from him, she said. Knowledge travels fast even when people don't. Haydock looked thoughtful. Someone needed precision tools for this. Wire that fine doesn't come from a shed. Slack turned to the vicar. Any recent repairs? Maintenance? New volunteers? The vicar hesitated. Yes, the lighting. A few months ago, Mr. Godfrey from the estate handled it. He's good with fittings. Miss Marple glanced at the brass lamp over the organ. Its cord was twisted wrong, one loop tighter than the others. Small, but wrong. Always the small things. She said nothing yet. Slack barked orders. Fetch Godfrey. Now. Within half an hour, Mr. Godfrey arrived, tall, wiry, eyes like steel filings, hands rough from work. He glanced at the book, the tools, the faces. Inspector, what's all this? Slack didn't waste time. You installed that lamp. You worked near this pew. You know wire, glue, tools. Explain that. He pointed at the coil on the table. Godfrey blinked. That's piano wire, I'd say, or organ wire, not mine. Haydock leaned forward. You're sure? Positive. Mine's copper. That's steel. Slack folded his arms. Funny. The organ's yours to maintain, isn't it? Godfrey stiffened. I check it. Yes. Doesn't mean I kill people with it. His jaw tightened. He wasn't scared, he was angry. Too angry. Marple studied him. The anger wasn't guilt, it was insult. She looked down at the coil again. The metal had faint scratches, shallow, diagonal, consistent, not random. Crafted. Not organ wire, she said softly. It's from a picture frame. The kind used to hang mirrors or portraits. Slack turned. How do you know that? The scratch pattern, she said. And the church has none that new, but the vicarage drawing room does. The vicar blinked. What are you implying? Nothing yet, she said. Only that someone used household tools, not professional ones. Slack grunted. So the vicar's family, then? Haydock frowned. Don't jump, man. But Slack had already turned, voice rising. Your niece helps you here, doesn't she? Choir assistant, always near the pews. The vicar's face reddened. She's a child. Old enough to mix chemicals, Slack snapped. She studied with Lester before he retired. Gasps circled the church. Whispers turned sharp. Miss Marple closed her eyes briefly. It was too soon. Too easy. Too loud. She stepped forward, voice calm, level. Inspector, no. Slack turned. What now? She met his glare with steady patience. You're wrong, she said quietly. That wire was meant to mislead. Slack folded his arms. Oh, and how do you know that, Miss Marple? She looked again at the spine of the book, at the glue that had pooled in one spot thicker than the rest. Intentional. Because, she said, whoever built it wanted us to suspect the person who fixes things, not the one who breaks them. Suspicion lands on the wrong hands, and the real craftsman stays hidden in the choir shadows. By afternoon, the church had turned into a maze of questions. Everyone had an alibi. Everyone had a reason. No one had a hole in their story, not yet. Inspector Slack spread his notes across the front pew. "Let's fix the timeline," he said. His tone sharp, his pen faster. Dr. Haydock leaned against the lectern, arms crossed. Miss Marple sat quietly, her hands folded over her bag. She didn't interrupt. She never did. Not until it mattered. Slack read aloud. 7:30, the vicar unlocks the church for morning practice. Mr. Penrose arrives 10 minutes later. The vicar nodded, pale but certain. "Yes, I left him alone after that." Slack continued. 8:15, Mrs. Price passes the gate, sees light inside, hears music. Mrs. Price nodded eagerly. "The hymn, Lead Kindly Light, I remember. He always liked that one." 8:45, Slack went on. Tommy Bell delivers post to the vicarage. Sees door open. No one around. The boy gulped. "Yes, sir." I called out, but no answer. Slack turned a page. Then, at 9:05, Miss Marple hears shouting. "The fall, the rest we know." He looked up. "That gives us a 20-minute window, between 8:40 and 9. Doctor." Haydock nodded. "Enough time to enter, plant something, and leave unnoticed." Slack's jaw tightened. So who was free? Eyes turned. Whispers began. Mrs. Price. Tommy Bell. The vicar. Each protested in order, as if rehearsed. Mrs. Price. "I was hanging laundry. The sheets were still wet." Tommy. "I was sorting letters. Asked the postmaster." The vicar. "I was in my study, writing Sunday's sermon." Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked softly. She wasn't knitting, of course, just pretending. The sound helped her think. Slack circled one name in his book. "Mr. Godfrey. Where were you?" The handyman shifted uncomfortably. "At the hall, fixing the stage curtain." "You can ask anyone." "I did," Slack said. "They saw you at 8, and again at 9:30. What about the middle?" Godfrey frowned. "Had to fetch a new screw from my shed. Only 10 minutes. Marple's head lifted slightly. 10? "Yes, miss," he said. 10, maybe 12. Her tone was mild. "And your shed, where is it?" "Behind the churchyard." Slack's pen stopped midline. "Behind?" Godfrey nodded, nervous now. "Close by. Easier for tools." Marple spoke softly, half to herself. "So, 10 minutes. Close enough to hear the organ stop. Close enough to walk in unnoticed." Godfrey's face flushed. "You think I?" "Not think," she said gently. "Only observe." Haydock cleared his throat. "Could he have touched the book?" "Anyone could have," Marple said. The door was open. Slack slammed his notebook shut. "Then everyone's guilty and no one is." "Brilliant." Marple smiled faintly. "Not everyone, Inspector. Just the one who counted on noise." Slack frowned. "Noise?" "The organ," she said. "When it plays, you can't hear footsteps. A perfect cover." Haydock nodded slowly. "Then whoever entered knew the music schedule." "Exactly," she said. "Which narrows it." Slack leaned forward. "How much?" "Someone from the choir, or someone who listened often." The vicar sighed. "That's half the village." Miss Marple tilted her head. "Then we reduce it again. Who had reason to move the hymn books yesterday?" No one spoke. Then Mrs. Price raised a trembling hand. "Ellen, the maid. She helps me dust the pews on Thursdays. She's young, doesn't mind the polish smell." Slack scribbled the name. "Where is she?" "At home, likely," Mrs. Price said. "She lives near the smithy." Marple's gaze sharpened. "The smithy." Slack noticed the change. "What?" "Wire," she said softly. "Where else would one find it that fine?" The silence returned taut, electric. Dr. Haydock closed his bag slowly. "So, Miss Marple, what are you suggesting?" She looked toward the open door, where sunlight spilled across the stone floor. "Nothing yet," she said. "Only that someone had 10 quiet minutes. 10 minutes no one can explain. The gap was small, but inside it, murder waited unseen. By evening, the village had turned restless. Too many questions, not enough answers. Inspector Slack sat in the vicarage parlour, coat off, tea untouched. Dr. Haydock paced. Miss Marple sat by the fire, her knitting idle in her lap. The clock ticked, the only thing still honest in the room. Slack spoke first. 10 minutes. That's all it takes to kill a man. Or to make a mistake, Marple murmured. Her eyes were half closed, but her mind wasn't. Haydock turned from the window. Whoever did this didn't panic. The mechanism, the poison, the placement, all calm, all careful. Slack grunted. Then we're looking for someone who doesn't rattle easy. Miss Marple nodded slightly. Or someone already living with guilt. He looked at her. Meaning? She smiled faintly. People used to lies don't fear one more. They rehearse it without knowing. Slack leaned back. Go on then, Jane. You've been watching everyone. What do you see? She adjusted her spectacles. Not what? Who? Her gaze went to the mantel. A small brass frame stood there. A photo of the choir. Arthur Penrose in the centre. Next to him, Ellen, the maid. Her eyes wide. Her smile. Careful. Too careful. She admired him, Marple said softly. Perhaps more than he knew. Slack frowned. Admired? She cleaned pews, not sang hymns. She listened, Marple said. She lingered, always near when he played. People notice patterns if they care enough. Haydock folded his arms. And you think she cared? I think she was seen caring, Marple replied. And someone else? Didn't like it. Slack tapped his pen. Jealousy, then? Possibly, she said. But not the romantic kind. The dangerous kind: pride, ownership, resentment. The room fell quiet again. The fire crackled. Outside, the evening bells started, dull and uneven. Slack looked at Haydock. Who gains from Penrose's death? The doctor thought. Hard to say. He wasn't rich. No will. No debts, as far as I know. No enemies? Only musical ones, Haydock said dryly. He played louder than most liked. Marple's smile deepened slightly. Noise can be more than sound, Doctor. It can be presence, and presence can irritate. Slack scowled. Speak plain, woman. All right, she said. Arthur Penrose was new, talented, polite. People liked him quickly. Too quickly. That unsettles small communities. Haydock nodded. Someone felt replaced. Yes, she said. And someone close to the organ, the choir, the rehearsals. Slack flipped his notes. Only 3 people fit that. Ellen, Mrs. Price, and Mr. Godfrey. Mrs. Price? Haydock asked. She's a gossip, not a killer. Gossip can kill slower than poison, Marple said. Sometimes faster. Slack sighed. She's been underfoot since morning. Marple tilted her head. Too helpful, perhaps? Slack frowned. You think she tampered with the book? Not necessarily, Marple said. But she handled it. She rearranged hymnals often. She told us herself. Haydock looked at her sharply. You mean she could have placed the poisoned one without knowing? Or knowing perfectly well, Marple said quietly. Silence again. The kind that grows thicker the longer it's ignored. Slack muttered. She's a widow. Lives alone. No motive except attention. Attention? Marple echoed. Yes. And jealousy. She's been replaced as church helper by a younger girl. Imagine the sting. The inspector's expression shifted, irritation turning to realization. You're saying she wanted to punish the girl? Marple didn't blink. Perhaps frighten her. Perhaps teach a lesson. But poison rarely obeys intentions. Haydock spoke, low and grim. She aimed for the girl. Missed the man. Marple nodded. Arthur sat where Ellen usually worked. He used her hymn book. Familiarity killed him. Slack stood. Then we've got her. Marple's tone cut through his certainty. No, not yet. He froze. Why not? She looked toward the doorway where faint footsteps echoed light, nervous. Because the one we need isn't afraid of guilt. She's afraid of being forgotten. Slack turned sharply. Who? Marple's voice dropped to a whisper. The one who cleaned what no one else noticed, and left fingerprints where only love would reach. Haydock frowned. Meaning? Marple smiled faintly. Meaning this isn't over, gentlemen. Not until we find out who changed the lock on the vestry door last night. Slack blinked. The door? Yes, she said softly. The door that shouldn't have been locked at all. Jealousy, guilt, and a locked door, and somewhere between them, the real motive begins to breathe. The next morning came too early. Grey light through lace curtains. A village holding its breath. Inspector Slack was already at the church. Notebook open. Expression grim. Dr. Haydock leaned against the altar rail. Marple arrived last quietly, as always. She carried a small paper parcel. "Morning, gentlemen," she said softly. Slack didn't look up. "Morning. Not much good about it." Haydock raised an eyebrow. "Found something?" Slack jabbed at his notes. "I've got 10 statements, 7 contradictions, and 1 missing key." Marple's tone stayed calm. "The vestry key?" He nodded. "Vicar keeps 2. 1 on him, 1 in the cabinet. Cabinet's locked. No sign of a break." Haydock crossed his arms. "So, someone had a copy." Slack grunted. "Exactly. But who'd bother copying a church key?" "Someone who wanted in," Marple said. Her eyes moved toward the side door. The lock gleamed faintly. New metal. Fresh scratches. "See that, Inspector?" Slack leaned closer. "Fresh scrape. Filed edge," she added. "A rough copy. Works once, maybe twice." He frowned. "You've been busy, Miss Marple." "I watch things," she said simply. Haydock knelt to check the hinge. Whoever used it didn't rush. No splintering. No damage. "Meaning they had time," Marple said. "Time and privacy." Slack sighed. "So now we've got a key, a poisoned book, and a choir full of suspects." "Not full," she said. "Just one who needed both access and revenge." Slack looked up. "Revenge?" She opened the small parcel. Inside lay a folded handkerchief, fine linen, lace edge, initials stitched in blue. E.B. Haydock frowned. "Ellen's?" Marple nodded. "I found it behind the pulpit, tucked into a crack in the floorboard." Slack's pen froze. "She hid it?" "Not quite," she said. "She dropped it. The powder residue on it says she handled the hymn book." Haydock bent closer. "White grains," he confirmed. "Same as before." Slack smirked. "Well, that's it then. The girl did it." Marple's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps. But look again." She unfolded the handkerchief. A faint brown mark near the corner. A fingerprint smudged, too large for Ellen's small hands. Slack cursed. "So someone used her things?" "Borrowed," Marple corrected. "Or planted." Haydock looked between them. "Frame job?" "Classic village misdirection," she said. "Use something innocent to disguise something clever." Slack slammed his notebook shut. "I'm sick of clever. Give me proof." Marple's gaze flicked to the floor. "The proof's right there." The light shifted. On the stone tiles near the pew, faint streaks of blue-shimmered chalk dust. Slack crouched. "Blue, like the stage markings in the parish hall." Haydock's brow furrowed. "Godfrey again?" Marple nodded slowly. "He was in both places that morning. The chalk isn't from the church, it's from the curtain measurements." Slack straightened. "So he was here, lied about it." "Maybe not lied," she said softly. "Maybe forgot to mention." Haydock frowned. "You think he's covering someone else?" Marple didn't answer. She reached for the hymn book again. The edges had been cleaned roughly, but one corner held a faint smear of red polish. "Furniture wax," she said. "The same kind Mrs. Price uses in the vicarage, the kind with carmine tint." Slack blinked. "Red polish? You're sure?" "Quite." Haydock looked stunned. "So she touched it after the poison was placed?" "Or before," Marple said, "to make sure it looked untouched." The inspector's patience snapped. "Then, who? The maid? The cleaner? The handyman? You keep circling." Marple's tone stayed steady. "Circling helps one see the pattern, Inspector. Straight lines miss it." He threw up his hands. "You've got patterns, I've got a dead man and too many fingerprints." Haydock sighed. She's right, Slack. The connections matter. Marple's eyes softened. Objects lie less than people. The polish, the chalk, the wire, all small things, yet they point to the same truth. Slack glared. And what truth is that? She looked toward the pulpit again. That this wasn't impulse. It was design. He narrowed his eyes. Design? Yes, she said quietly. Every step measured. Every sound timed. Every clue placed just far enough apart to confuse us. Slack exhaled slowly. So, someone planned this. The village didn't have a killer by chance. It had a strategist hiding in daylight. By afternoon, Inspector Slack had everyone gathered in the parish hall, chairs in a crooked circle, faces pale, eyes restless. The vicar stood by the door, wringing his hands. Dr. Haydock leaned against a piano bench, arms folded. Miss Marple sat quietly near the window, not watching them, but the clock above the door. Slack slapped his notebook shut. Let's do this one more time. Slowly. He pointed his pen. Mr. Godfrey, you left the hall at what hour? 8:40, Godfrey said. Went to my shed. Back by 9. Slack nodded. Mrs. Price? She adjusted her shawl. Laundry, Inspector. Between 8 and 9. Ask my neighbor, she saw me hang the sheets. Slack turned. Ellen? The girl's voice was small. I was polishing the vestry handles, the brass ones. I left before 9. Miss Marple's needles clicked softly, a sound like thought. Slack continued. Vicar? In my study, he said. Writing a sermon. Lost track of time. Slack smirked. That's convenient. The vicar flushed. It's the Lord's work, not leisure. The inspector's tone sharpened. And Miss Marple, you were? At home, she said, listening to the church clock. It chimed late. Late, he echoed. By how much? 2 minutes, she said. Just enough to confuse the truth. Slack frowned. What truth? She looked up. The timing of death. The room shifted. Tension rose like static. Dr. Haydock straightened. She's right. The first shout came just after 9, not before. The organ stopped earlier than we thought. Slack rubbed his temple. So the gap wasn't 20 minutes. It was 10. Marple nodded. 10 minutes no one could explain. Until now. She turned to Ellen. You said you left before 9. Yes, Miss Marple. You're sure? The girl hesitated. I think so. You think? Her hands trembled. The clock in the vestry said 10 to 9. I looked at it. Marple's eyes sharpened. And you believe it? Yes, why wouldn't I? Because, Marple said softly, the clock in the vestry stopped last week. Dr. Haydock told the vicar to have it fixed. Gasps. Slack froze mid-step. Stopped? Completely, Marple said. 7 days ago. Which means, Ellen, the time you saw wasn't 10 to 9. It was 8:40. The girl's face drained of color. I didn't know. Slack's pen tapped the table. So she was in the vestry at 8:40. The exact window. Ellen shook her head fast. I didn't hurt him. I was wiping the pews. He wasn't even there. Marple's tone stayed gentle. I believe you. You left, but someone else arrived just after. Slack frowned. Who? Marple looked at the vicar. Tell us, Reverend. When you left your study, did you close your sermon book? He blinked. No, I left it open. She nodded. Then someone touched it. There's a faint thumbprint in red polish. The same shade Mrs. Price uses. All eyes turned. Mrs. Price stiffened. Polish? I clean everything with it. That's not proof. Marple spoke quietly. No. But the stain on the vestry handle matches too. You were there after Ellen, not before. Slack's face hardened. You changed your story. Mrs. Price's voice cracked. I didn't kill him. I only wanted to move the books back in place. He frightened me. Marple's gaze softened. What frightened you, dear? Mrs. Price hesitated, then whispered. He said he knew. About the letter. The room went silent. Every head turned. Slack's pen froze. What letter? Tears welled in her eyes. The one I wrote years ago. The one that should have burned. Marple nodded slowly. And that's the reason, isn't it? Fear of being found out. Mrs. Price's voice broke. I just wanted to stop him from showing it, not kill him. Slack's voice was rough now. You stopped him, all right. Marple stood, her tone calm, but final. The time fits, the clues fit, and the fear fits. She looked around the hall, one last slow glance. The gap closes, she said softly. Around one person. 10 missing minutes now sealed the truth, and fear had written the motive. The rain began just as they brought her in. Mrs. Price, face pale, hair pulled tight beneath her scarf. She looked smaller under the harsh light of the parish hall. Inspector Slack stood by the window. Notebook open, voice sharp. Sit down, Mrs. Price. She obeyed, clutching her handbag like a shield. Her fingers trembled against the leather. Dr. Haydock sat near the fireplace, silent, watching. Miss Marple sat beside him, eyes soft, hands folded. Only her knitting needles moved quiet, rhythmic, steady. Slack started his questioning. You admit you were in the vestry. Mrs. Price nodded once. Yes. At what time? I don't know. After the girl left. Before the music stopped. That's vague. Slack snapped. Too vague. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't kill him. I just moved the books. Moved them? Slack repeated. Why? She hesitated. Because the pews looked untidy. He never put them back right. Slack leaned closer. And you touched the hymn book? Her voice faltered. I may have. He slammed his notebook shut. That's enough. The sound made her flinch. Haydock frowned. Marple's knitting paused mid-click. Slack circled her like a hound. You handled the poisoned book. Your polish was on the pages. Your fingerprints were on the pew. You had motive. You were scared he'd expose your letter. Admit it. Mrs. Price gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. I didn't mean to hurt him, I swear it. I just wanted to frighten him, make him stop. By dusting cyanide where he prayed. Slack barked. She shook her head wildly. I didn't know it was poison. I thought it was powder, something harmless. He said he'd listen if I gave him a warning. Who said? Slack pressed. She froze. Marple looked up. That pause mattered. Pauses always did. Slack repeated the question. Who? Mrs. Price whispered. Mr. Godfrey. The room stilled. Slack blinked. Godfrey told you to do this. He said he'd help me, she cried. He mixed something harmless, he said. Just to scare him. Slack straightened, jaw tightening. Well, that's convenient. Haydock leaned forward. Inspector, she's terrified. Listen to her. Slack ignored him. Where is Godfrey now? A constable answered from the doorway. Gone, sir. Packed his tools. Didn't return home. Slack cursed under his breath. Of course he did. He turned back to Mrs. Price. You were his accomplice. You handled the poison. Maybe didn't mean to, but you did. And now he's running. She buried her face in her hands. I didn't mean for anyone to die. Marple spoke softly. No one ever does. Slack snapped. Stay out of this, Miss Marple. Her eyes didn't lift. Her tone stayed even. I'm merely observing. Slack turned back to the doctor. She just confessed. That's enough for me. Haydock's voice was low. She confessed to fear, not murder. Slack ignored him again. He leaned over Mrs. Price. Tell me, did you see him mix the powder? No. Did you ask what it was? No. He smirked. Then you'll hang for trusting the wrong man. She sobbed harder, shaking her head. Marple's eyes didn't leave Slack. Her needle stopped moving. The inspector took a deep breath, already turning toward the constable. Take her to the station. I'll get a warrant for Godfrey next. Marple's voice cut the room in. Half. No, Inspector. Slack froze mid-step. He turned, glare sharp. What now? She rose slowly, calm as ever. You've missed it. He blinked. Missed what? Her tone was soft, but the air changed around it. The moment you believed her fear was the crime, instead of what fear made her do. Slack frowned. English, please. Marple stepped closer to the table, her eyes on the hymn book laid open under the lamp. The poison wasn't placed by steady hands. It was placed by someone trembling, but not from guilt, from sickness. Haydock's brows knit. Sickness? She nodded once. Yes. And we've all seen it. We just didn't look closely enough. The room fell silent. Marple had shifted the ground again, and truth was about to change direction. They gathered again in the parish hall. Rain at the windows, cold in the floorboards, silence between breaths. Inspector Slack stood rigid by the table. Dr. Haydock watched the door. Miss Marple stood near the hymn board, calm as a clock. The curate entered last, collar neat, eyes tired, hands folded, but never still. Slack began at once. Reverend Markham, you were first to the fallen man. You held his head. You called the doctor. You stayed close to the pew. Why? The curate's voice was thin. Because he needed help. Help was useless, Slack said. You already knew. The curate swallowed. No. Miss Marple didn't move. Her voice was gentle. Your hands shook on Sunday. They shook again Monday. They shook today. Not nerves. A tremor. He glanced at her, then away. I'm often cold. No, she said softly. It is not the cold. Slack thumped his notebook. Enough riddles. Get to it. Marple turned to the table. On it lay the hymn book, the pressed flower, the coil of wire, the handkerchief with the wrong-sized print. She touched nothing. She only spoke. First, she said, the access. A copied. Key. The vestry lock scraped, not forced. A copy made badly. Filed in haste. Used once. Slack nodded. Someone in the vicarage, he said. Someone with quiet time. Marple's eyes stayed on the curate. Someone who could take the vicar's spare, press it into wax, then return it. Someone trusted. Someone who tidies after prayers. The curate's breath changed. Small. Fast. Second, she said. The mechanism. Not copper wire. Steel. From a picture frame. Not church stock. Vicarage stock. Slack shot the vicar a look. The vicar winced. The frames in the study have been repaired. Marple nodded once. The scratch pattern matched the wire in the spine. She continued. Third, the residue. Red polish. Carmine tint. The very polish you keep in the vestry closet. Mrs. Price uses it. The vicar uses it. So do you, Reverend Markham. On the lectern. The curate found the floor with his eyes. He did not lift them. Fourth, she said softly. The timing. The organ covers footsteps. The clock chimed late. Ellen left at 8:40. The death came after, between 8:50 and 9. 10 minutes for a careful person. 10 minutes for a planned act. Slack folded his arms. Planned, he echoed. Dr. Haydock spoke low. And the sickness? Marple turned the lamp toward the book's spine. The glue line shone unevenly. See the pool here? Glue gathered. The hand that pressed it trembled. Not guilt, a condition. She looked at the curate's fingers. They trembled, even now, especially now. The curate drew his hands into his sleeves. Please, he whispered. People are watching. They watched all week, Marple said. They saw your hands shake at the altar. They saw your tea spill in the vicarage. They did not think it mattered. Slack took a step. Motive, he said flatly. Give me motive. Marple faced Mrs. Price. Her voice grew softer. You told him a secret years ago. A letter you regretted. The curate counseled you then. He knew. He kept it. He still knew. Mrs. Price sobbed once. I needed help. Marple's eyes returned to the curate. And now Ellen. Young. Eager. Always at the music. You warned her to keep away. She did not listen. Arthur was kind. He listened to everyone. He learned too much. Slack's brow darkened. So the curate cleans the parish? By killing the man? The curate shook his head. Tears trembled, but did not fall. I meant to frighten him, he whispered. Only frighten. He was breaking the choir, breaking Ellen's peace, stirring old shame. I asked God to Steady, but he did not. Marple's tone stayed even. You asked God to steady your hands, but you built the thing anyway. He closed his eyes. For the village, he breathed. For order. For quiet. Slack reached for his cuffs. The curate flinched back, then bolted. He made 2 steps toward the side door, then stopped himself. He seemed to fold, as if the room had pressed him flat. "Don't," Marple said gently. "No more running." He turned. Empty. "Done." Slack took him by the arm. "Do you confess?" The curate did not answer. He only swayed. Marple stepped closer. Her gaze moved to his sleeve hem. "One more thing," she said. "Proof." Not a word. Not a guess. She reached with her knitting needle, hooked a frayed thread, lifted the edge. A tiny brass bead rolled free. It rang once on the table, then stilled beside the poisoned page. The bead from the book's hidden trigger lay in plain sight, and the air in the hall finally remembered how to breathe. The bead rolled once, a single metallic click. Small, sharp, like a truth escaping. No one moved. Inspector Slack froze halfway to the door. Dr. Haydock leaned in. Mrs. Price gasped softly. Miss Marple stood still, her eyes on the bead, her tone calm, almost kind. "That," she said, "is where it began." Slack frowned. "With that tiny thing?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Tiny things always start big sins." The curate sat slumped on the bench, head low, hands clasped tight. He didn't look at anyone. Marple continued. "The mechanism was clever, but not perfect. The bead came loose too soon. That's why he died at the wrong time. That's why the clock and the witness both confused us." Slack exhaled hard. "Explain slowly." She nodded. "I will." She walked to the table. The hymn book lay open again. Page 97. Arthur Penrose came to practice, same as always. He sat where the choir left his music last night. He touched this book, the one someone had tampered with. She pointed to the faint residue on the page. Inside the spine, the wire was stretched tight. The bead sealed the powder. When the page turned, the bead cracked. The dust fell onto his hands. Slack's jaw tightened. "Fast-acting poison. You said so yourself." "Yes," she said. "Death within minutes. That's why it had to happen during the hymn. No witnesses close enough. No interruption." "Doctor," Haydock's voice was low. "So he died exactly where he should have felt safe." Marple nodded. "Faith often makes the perfect hiding place." She looked at the curate. "Reverend Markham built it. He designed it weeks ago. To frighten, not kill, so he told himself." Slack turned sharply. "He admits it?" Marple didn't answer him. She spoke as if narrating what the heir already knew. "He made a copy of the vestry key when helping the vicar oil the locks. He took the steel wire from the frame of the parish portrait. He mixed the powder using a medical pamphlet Dr. Haydock once gave him toxins and their remedies. He tested it once, on a rat." The curate shuddered. His lips parted, but no sound came. "You wanted control," Marple said softly. "You wanted silence back in your church. But Arthur was louder than hymns. He questioned you, he pitied you, and he saw your shaking hands." She paused, her voice gentler now. "He threatened to tell the bishop." The curate looked up, eyes hollow. "He mocked me." "No," Marple said. "He worried for you. But pride hears only insult." Slack paced behind them. "So you planned it. You waited for the right day." Marple nodded. "The day Mrs. Price cleaned, the day Ellen helped dust. Layers of innocence to hide your work. You made sure the book changed hands. And when it did, you were ready." Dr. Haydock rubbed his temple. "My God." "No, Doctor," Marple said quietly. "God was not in it." She turned to Mrs. Price. "He let you think it was harmless. He needed you to touch it. You carried the residue home. That's why your polish glowed under the lamp. You were a tool, nothing more." Mrs. Price began to cry, softly like rain. Slack's tone softened, but only slightly. "So the plan backfired." Marple nodded. The tremor betrayed him. When he glued the wire, his hand slipped. A fraction of an inch enough to make the bead break early. Arthur turned the page sooner than expected, the poison released before the service, before anyone was meant to see. Haydock whispered, and then Marple's gaze dropped to the floor. He fell. The curate panicked, tried to remove the evidence, wiped the edge, closed the book, but the dust clung. And the handkerchief, Ellen's handkerchief, was already in his pocket. He used it, then hid it near the pulpit. The curate's voice cracked. I prayed for forgiveness. Marple met his eyes. You prayed for delay. Forgiveness comes later. He bowed his head. The room was silent except for the rain. Slack finally spoke. Motive? Marple's voice softened to almost a whisper. Fear. Pride. Love all twisted into one. He loved the church. He feared exposure. He hated weakness. Arthur reminded him of all three. The curate's hands shook violently now. I only wanted him gone, he said. I wanted peace. Peace doesn't come through poison, she said gently. It comes through truth. And truth has finally arrived. Slack gestured to the constable. Take him. But the curate didn't move. He looked at Miss Marple, not defiant, not angry, just empty. You knew, he whispered. From the start. She nodded. Yes. His lips trembled. How? She looked down at her knitting bag. The lily of the valley, she said. You pressed it in the book days before. Only you keep them by your window. Poison among prayer. He blinked. Once, then looked away, as if even God had turned his face. Slack led him out slowly. The door shut. The lock clicked. Dr. Haydock exhaled. Mrs. Price sobbed. Marple stood still. Slack turned. You knew every step. She smiled faintly. I only followed where reason walked first. The inspector shook his head. You and your reason. Marple looked back at the empty pew where Arthur had fallen. Her voice was quiet, measured, final. She didn't raise her voice. Haydock said softly to no one in particular. She didn't need to. The truth lay quiet in the church, polite, cold and complete. The church was quiet again. No voices, no footsteps, only rain tapping the roof like a tired clock. Mrs. Price sat in the front pew, her shawl damp, her eyes hollow. Dr. Haydock poured her tea he didn't think she'd drink. Inspector Slack stood by the doorway, hat in hand. He wasn't gloating. Not this time. Miss Marple remained near the altar, looking up. Not at the cross, but at the ceiling beam where light leaked through a small crack. Even holiness had flaws, she thought. Slack cleared his throat. Paperwork will take all night. Haydock nodded. Justice never hurries. Marple's voice broke the silence, soft as dusk. Justice rarely comforts, either. Mrs. Price turned, eyes red. He was a good man once, Miss Marple. Truly. He helped so many. Marple nodded. I believe you. Then why? Because, she said quietly, goodness is never proof against pride. The words hung there. Not cruel, not cold, just true. Slack sighed. You know, I've seen killers cry, but never one so polite about it. He almost thanked me when I cuffed him. Marple's eyes softened. He wanted peace. He mistook silence for it. Haydock glanced at her. You almost sound sorry for him. She smiled faintly. I'm sorry for all of us, Doctor. We never see the danger in devotion until it's too late. Slack adjusted his coat. You think the church will recover? Marple's gaze stayed fixed on the empty pews. Places recover. People take longer, Mrs. Price whispered. Will they forgive him? Marple turned to her gently. Forgiveness isn't ours to give, my dear. Only understanding. Haydock stared into his cup. Hard thing, understanding a man who builds a trap in a holy place. Hard, Marple agreed, but not impossible. A long pause. The kind that lets truth breathe. Slack finally spoke again. Every time I think I've seen it all, you prove me wrong, Miss Marple. She smiled. Human nature always has one more layer, Inspector. Just when we think it's finished, it starts again. He nodded slowly. Evil in a pulpit. Who'd believe it? Marple folded her hands. Evil doesn't need shadows, she said. It prefers sunlight. The clock above the altar ticked once, Twice. Sound steady again. Normal returning or pretending to. Haydock took his hat. I'll check on Mrs. Price tomorrow. Do, Marple said. She'll need something warm and something honest. Slack lingered. Anything else I should note for the record? Marple looked toward the open door, where daylight spilled in faint and pale. Her eyes were far away now, not tired, just thoughtful. Yes, she said quietly. Write this, Inspector. Evil hides in plain daylight. The light stayed bright, but the shadows never left Street Mary Mead. Evening came soft over Street Mary Mead. The storm had passed. Clouds gone thin. Air quiet again. Miss Marple sat by her window, tea beside her, needles resting in the saucer. The village lamps flickered on one by one, small, steady sentinels against the dark. Down the lane the church bell rang once, a hollow tone. Not mournful, just tired. She watched a boy on a bicycle pass the gate, whistling, life resuming its rhythm, as it always did. Habit. Such a curious thing, she thought. From the kitchen, the kettle sighed. Steam curled like memory. She poured another cup. No sugar, no fuss. Hastings might have called it dull. Poirot would have called it balance. She simply called it necessary. The garden outside glimmered faintly, petals still wet, air scented with rain and earth. A robin hopped along the fence, head cocked, as if asking whether it was safe to sing again. She smiled. Yes, she murmured, safe enough for now. A knock came at the door. Dr. Haydock, hat in hand, expression softer than usual. Long day, he said. They always are, she replied. He looked at her. You never seem surprised, Miss Marple. Not by death, not by deceit. She stirred her tea once, twice. Surprise fades when patterns don't. He frowned. Patterns? She nodded. People act from habit, Doctor. The same gestures, the same excuses. That's what tells you the truth, never the words. He smiled faintly. Still, you see too much. She glanced at the empty chair across from her. Someone must. The clock chimed the half-hour. Quiet. Measured. Exact. Haydock rose. Try to rest, he said. She nodded, though rest rarely came easily. When he left, she refilled her cup. The kettle still warm. Her thoughts still turning. She looked again toward the church tower in the distance, its light faint but constant. People act from habit, she whispered. And habit often kills. The tea cooled. The clock ticked on. And somewhere beyond the hedges another secret began to stir. Calm returned. But Miss Marple knew peace never lasted long in Street Mary Mead. Thank you, dear friends, for joining us tonight in our quiet corner of mysteries. Another case solved. Another truth unmasked. Tell me, which clue gave it away first? Was it the hymn book, or the hand that trembled too long? Share your guesses below. I always love seeing how sharp our listeners truly are. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, don't forget to stay subscribed. There's always another kettle waiting to boil, and another secret stirring in Street Mary Mead. Until next time, may your tea stay warm, your clock stay honest, and your instincts just a little sharper than before. Good night, friends. Sleep softly, truth never does. And somewhere beyond the quiet hedges of Street Mary Mead, another kettle begins to boil. The teacups are washed, the rain has stopped, but not every envelope has been opened. Next week, a letter arrives that no one remembers posting, its seal unbroken, its ink still wet. Inside a single sentence that shouldn't exist. Miss Marple will read it once, then twice, and realize the writer might already be dead. So brew your tea, dear friends, because when the postman knocks again, truth will ride with him.